The colonial era in India, we will do some important question answers. So there are total 10 question answers. So the first question is, how were colonial conquests achieved during the age of colonialism? And the answer is, during the age of colonialism, many empires achieved conquest through military campaigns that involved massacre, forced labor, and enslavement of indigenous population using violence and coercion to control land, resources, and people. What was India's share in the world GDP before the arrival of European? And the answer is, before the arrival of European, India was one of the world's richest economy and is historically estimated to have contributed nearly one fourth of the world GDP due to its strong agricultural, handicraft, and trade network. Next question is, what was Portuguese religious persecution in Goa? So, Portuguese religious persecution in Goa involved forced conversion, destruction of temples, and punishment of those practicing non Christian religion, especially during the Goa Inquisition to impose Christianity under colonial rule. Next question is, how did the British transform from raiders to rulers in India? The British became rulers by exploiting internal conflict among Indian rulers, maintaining a strong army, and using revenue control to expand their political power. British combined trade profit with military conquest and used policies like subsidiary alliances to dominate Indian states. Which indigenous industries were popular in India before the British arrived? And the answer is, before the British arrived, India was famous for its textile industry like cotton and silk, metalwork, handicraft, pottery, shipbuilding, and spice trade, which were highly valued both domestically and internationally. Next is, why did Macaulay Minot gain the upper hand over the traditional Indian education system despite opposition from British Orientalists? Answer is, although some British Orientalists wanted Indian students to be taught in their own languages, Macaulay Minot gained the upper hand because the British government favored English education to promote Western knowledge, create a loyal administrative class, and undermine traditional Indian schools and learning system. Next, what does it mean when it is said that Indian funded their own subjugation? It means that Indian resources and wealth were used to pay for the British colonial administration, armies, and wars, so the cost of controlling and exploiting India was largely borne by Indians themselves, even though it served British interest. How did India respond to British conquest after it began? Almost immediately after the British conquest, resistance movement emerged across India as people and local rulers tried to repel the foreign rulers and protect their land, culture, and independence from what was seen as a self imposed guest. Next, why is the Great Rebellion of 1857 also called the Sepoy Mutiny? Because it began as a revolt by Indian soldiers, that is the Sepoy, in the British Army, triggered by issues like the use of grease cartridges, unfair treatment, and general resentment against British policies. How did India's classical culture influence the West in the 19th century? In the 19th century, India's classical culture, including literature, art, philosophy, and religious texts, flowed back to the West through scholars, translations, and exhibitions, creating a lasting influence on Western thought, art, and Oriental studies. Okay, so these are the 10 important question answers. Let us see one case study is also there from the textbook. So it is page number 93-94. The paragraph has been taken from there, from the same chapter, and the paragraph goes like this. By positioning themselves as a kingmaker, the East India Company gradually established control over increasingly large territories. In the 19th century, it went a step further and introduced the infamous doctrine of lapse, according to which any princely state would be annexed if its ruler died without a natural male heir. So these deliberately disregarded the Hindu traditions of adoption, which was a legitimate means of succession in Indian ruler houses, Indian royal houses, right? So this is the paragraph. Now, few question answers are there. First question is, how did the East India Company gradually establish control over Indian territories? By positioning itself as a kingmaker, interfering in succession disputes, and expanding influence over princely state. Why was the doctrine of lapse considered unfair to Indian rulers? Because it disregarded Hindu traditions of adoption, which allowed ruler to appoint heirs and annex their state if they had no natural male heir. So, in which century did the East India Company introduce the doctrine of lapse? In the 19th century. What was the impact of the doctrine of lapse on princely state? It led to the annexation of many princely states by the British, expanding their territorial control. And the last, name one famous princely state annexed under the doctrine of lapse. Satara, Jhansi, Awadh. Okay. So this is a case study from the chapter The Colonial Era of India, page number 93-94. And these are 10 important question answers, the colonial era in India. So this much for this video, and thank you so much for watching until the end.